Not actually necessarily a podcast, but I thought that this might come out to be something usable in the form of a podcast, maybe one day, hopefully. Yes. So the goal is to talk about the question, all the questions that are getting closed. We need a name for this for the event of the last weekend.
Repocalypse.
Repocalypse. Okay, so the first to divide. I don't know what's going on. So this is the whole reason I started this call, so that you guys can fill me in. Part one is that there has been a lot of closing of very popular old questions going on. Because they're
not just closing, deletion.
Deletion, correct. Sorry, deletion of old to deleted closed questions. And I heard that even my logo question isn't on anymore, so I'm going to have to ask it again.
That's been gone for ages.
I know,
man. I can't believe you didn't know that.
I know. I know. It's just telling myself it might come back someday if I keep checking. So I guess one of the issues is what's going on there, and are we happy with the standards of deleting the questions, and is there something we can do besides deleting the questions? And this whole thing, and it's a completely separate issue, has come to a head because it got noticed all of a sudden. And the reason it got noticed is because there's a new recalc of reputation, and everybody who had earned a lot of points on a really popular old question, was dismayed to learn that they had lost a lot of points on the popular new question. So those are separate things to talk about. And yeah,
we kind of had a perfect storm here because there was this house cleaning going on prior to all this rep recalculation stuff. One of the moderators on Stack Overflow got the idea that we should go through some of these questions that have been closed for ages and are just hanging around, and they're really popular in terms of votes and views, but they're completely inappropriate given our current standards for the site, and nobody's reopening them, nobody's trying to clean them up. We should see if there's a reason to keep them around or not. And so he posted on Meta and gave this list, and people went apeshit. And so
apeshit in is that in a negative way? I'm sorry. Some people like apeshit.
Yeah. Let's stay far away.
Okay. What was the post on Meta?
That was the 2012 deletion audit, right?
Yeah.
So there's actually a list of deletion audits. So there's a list of questions there that the Great Question Deletion Audit of 2012. List of freely available programming tools. What is the single most influential book every programmer should read? Hidden features of C#. Oh God, I hope they didn't close that one. It's still closed.
Not yet. See, again, these have been closed for a while here, at least in a lot of these cases. This one, actually, not so long. Okay. But it was kind of just a community review. Jeff has done this once before, I think 2 years ago. But
I'm reopening that one. Wait, I'm not going to do that. That's going to cause trauma. Okay. Just some of these questions are amazingly useful.
Yeah, well, that's why people kind of went apeshit about it.
Yeah.
And so this discussion's ongoing. This is already underway, people arguing for and against the deletion of these. And then this rep thing comes down, and all of a sudden, we're making people very, very painfully aware of stuff that's already been deleted.
That they
wrote or participated on.
Yeah.
And didn't really realize were gone until... if you check your rep history now, that logo question probably stands out like a gigantic sore thumb. So we made the rep history.
Wait. I'm sorry, I want to do this. I'm playing along. I'm sorry that I'm a little bit slow. Stack Overflow. So I can actually see the logo question again in my reputation.
Yes, you've never been able to do this before. Every other recalc we've done, you'd lose questions for deleted. You'd lose rep for deleted questions.
Where would I
go to the graph?
Go to the graph. Okay. Oh, of reputation. Here we are.
See it?
In the bottom right-hand corner, the big minus. No.
There's anything that's below
because it's been deleted for a long time.
Let me get to your page here. Reputation.
It was deleted around September of 2011.
The lower graph there, where it says September 11th, drag, select that, and you'll see this great big red bar that just stabs down.
I got a minus 615.
Yeah.
It's minus 623 now. Is there a way that people can pile on so I can lose even more reputation with this question after it's been deleted?
No.
Okay.
Stop suggesting ways we could make this worse.
What else did what was it? There's an early question in September that got deleted. I lost a ton of reputation. How do I move? Wait, that's the turtle again? Please, sir, send me the codes. Oh, this was a meta question. Because we used to just have the meta on site. I mean, this is September 08, so nobody expects anything from September 08 to still be around. But this was, okay, harsh. Got it.
Yeah, so this is a bad way to introduce people to, a new feature. This was actually Jarrod, you should talk about this, but this is actually a really cool enhancement they made. And unfortunately, this is just a really, really lousy way to kind of introduce people to it, because instead of seeing, hey, my reputation is always up to date in real time now, they see, wow, all of these questions, all of these answers I wrote are deleted. I never knew this, but now I can see.
Yeah.
1,000 knives stabbing down into the it's so kind of a bad experience, and people, we've been dodging this bullet for years.
It's just been sort of hidden.
Yeah, there's been no way to search deleted questions. There's been no way to, see them in your profile. So you kind of knew some things were disappearing as the standards on the site changed, like your meta thing, right? I mean,
right.
You probably would have realized that was gone if you'd ever thought about it. But why would you ever think about it? That's old news.
Yeah, that is old news. But the one about moving a turtle in logo is definitely not old news. That was. Well, some of these things.
And so you see that, and you reveal a new profile, and you see that, and you think, man, I thought this was still out there, providing valuable resources to all the logo programmers in the world, and now it's gone. And you jump on that, post an angry screed about it.
And you can still see it, but it just shows up as, like, if you're the poster, do you see it? You see the text of it? Or do you just see like a 404 page if you try to go?
You'll see it if you go to it and you have 10,000 rep.
Yeah.
It's linked.
So there's a chance that you could actually see your old abused and destroyed question.
Yes.
Wait, I click on that. Click on that. Here you are. What do I see? Well, I don't count. Yeah, you just see that it's closed. Oh my God, this thing is, and it's also like abusive. It's like locked by Tim Post, closed is not a real question, and deleted by Jeff Atwood. Luckily, I have undelete. Undeleted by Joel Spolsky. Actually, the first answer to this is, well, that was really deleted, and that was fair. That was... Okay, anyway, I don't want to go into this too much. So there's a few things going on. One is we don't really think there's anything wrong with the fact that we now do reputation calculation faster. It's just that actually showing people that things were deleted is revealing to them something that's going on. And I think we probably agree that just hiding stuff from people is not necessarily the right course of action. We never believe in hell banning or tricking people into thinking their questions were still open.
It saved us a lot of grief, though. Because
but it saved us grief for the same reason. I mean, that was the hell banning idea, right? Was that you would never know that your question was deleted.
Oh yeah, no, it's that's the thing. I mean, it's such an appealing idea. This was going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah.
It's kind of unfortunate it happened right now because, as I said, we were already kind of in the middle of yet another question on deletionism versus inclusionism on Meta, and so this just really kind of poured gasoline on the flames there.
Right.
But. Realistically, we've got some of the top users on the site who were, frankly, not aware that so much stuff was getting deleted over the years.
Yeah.
And some of this, by the way, I mean, some of this, it has no current value. These were fun questions that were asked 3 years ago, and there's really no reason why they should have been kept around this long. We were goofing around on Stack Overflow in the early days, and produced a lot of stuff that really wasn't worth keeping.
I think
at the same time, some of these really are worthy of discussion.
Yeah.
Some of these posts, they may be not quite exactly perfect questions and answers, or maybe a little bit subjective. Or
I want to call out. Yeah, I want to call out. Like there are several categories of things that I think that the current lynch mob believes should be closed. That I think should stay open. Right? Like there's a few categories of things, and it's usually. Cases of a overly literal interpretation of a particular rule. For example, one example I want to call out is a lot of times you see things that are closed to deleted questions because two different questions have the same answer. And I think Jeff even made that same mistake in his last blog post talking about gaming identity questions. Whether or not you like gaming identity questions, I don't want to drag that into it. But if three people ask a question using entirely different words and they all have the same answer, which is, the game blah, blah, those are three different questions but the same answer, and they should all stay open. Maybe they can be...
that's a tough one because you can ask the exact same question.
Yeah.
I mean... You can ask it with completely different words. You can take any question on the site.
I want to have. Let's take the example. The example of that game, which again, it's being a game identity question. This is some people are going to get confused and think I'm talking about whether or not you should have game identity questions on the site. Different issue. But if one person says, "What is the game with floating islands?" and somebody else says, "What is the game with flying cities?" and they're both referring to, I don't remember the name of what the game was. I'll never find it. But actually, here, I'll find it.
Okay, so that's a good example because you could potentially be talking about two different games.
You could potentially, and not only that, but those are both things that somebody might type into. Wait, here you go. Flying islands. Yeah. Okay. So it's on the gaming site, and the game is Netstorm Islands at War. Okay.
Yeah.
The point is that we want those three questions to stay alive and to stay in there because those are things that people will use on Google because somebody is going to be having this problem. They're going to be searching for flying islands and somebody's going to be searching for floating cities or vice versa. And we want to give them both an answer. We don't just want to answer one of them.
But this is why even if it does get closed as a duplicate, we discourage people from deleting duplicate questions.
Duplicate closed.
When they're closed, they can sit closed. There's a link.
Yeah.
But you don't have to delete it.
Okay.
So if you come along from Google and you find your floating cities question and it's closed, it's got no answers on it, but right there at the top there's a great big link to another question.
This is a duplicate of that other question.
You click on that, bam, there's your answer right there.
Fair enough. As long as you don't delete it, then that's okay. As long as
we don't delete it, we're fine there. That's deleting duplicates is extremely problematic because you lose your goalpost or signposts there.
Right. So another example I want to give is sometimes somebody asks a question. I think in the case of the logo, the logo one. I'm trying to remember the objections to that question. But the main one was that I was not actually having that problem, that I was just typing gibberish into the site because I was trying to make a point during a podcast. And that's fair. But that question then got some good answers and some bad answers. The good answers were dumb jokes. The bad answers were dumb jokes. So there was a bad answer, which later got deleted, which was like, first you have to write a test before you can. And it's like, hey, we're having a joke. So yes, that stuff needs to go. That definitely delete that answer, definitely. But there was the top rank answer was actually kind of a summary of how to move the turtle and logo, which was a useful thing and probably one of the best things to find if you actually were searching for how to move a turtle and logo on Google for some reason.
Oh, sure.
So we had actually created an artifact that was useful for the internet, and the argument for closing it was, well, Joel was not actually having that problem, and that's bizarre, right? Like that's just like, who cares about Joel? Why does that matter? What matters is there anything wrong with this artifact? Is it making the internet better or worse? The intent of the asker.
Well, this segues us into the whole question of, why do we have these rules in the first place? Because asking a serious question, asking about a problem you actually face, I mean, that's one of the first pieces of guidance we give people on the site.
Sure.
But you can totally produce something of value by asking, stuff you don't actually need to know or stuff you aren't actually concerned about. The problem is with doing that is if you...
Are those dogs?
I apologize. Let me get back inside the house here.
That's okay. We got more background noise from the office than you have from the herd of wild dogs that you've been keeping caged up in your basement.
Let's not talk about that. There's what was I saying? Oh, so yeah, if you ask this totally bullshit joke question and it happens to get good answers.
Right.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah, you came in and you did exactly what we told you not to do, but it worked. You win. You won the lottery. Great.
Yeah.
Good for you.
That's one of the important things is that a lot of the closed reasons have more to do with the answers than the question, and sometimes something just gets really, really valuable answers. Like I think, there was a history of I should check the status of the center. Center cannot hold, since people threaten to delete that every once in a while.
It's locked right now.
Actually, yeah, The answer itself is locked.
So that question is, man, of course our search engine can't find it.
We got to spell center the British way.
No, it's not T.S. Eliot. The center cannot hold.
Here.
Lordy, lordy, lordy. I have to find my old tweet about it. Come on, Twitter, you can do it. There it is, question 1732454. Protected. It's not even voted close. So this one is like the question is yet another question. It's not a particularly good question. The answer doesn't even answer the question. But what the answer does do is first of all, it's amusing. But even more than that is it tells you something about the question, which is, it basically says stop asking this form of question altogether. You are doing the wrong thing if you're asking this form of question. We get a lot of these. So there's sort of something, kind of extra valuable going on there. Even though, once again, the question itself is not that worthy. So a lot of times it's the activity in the answers that we should be protecting, not the activity in the questions. And a lot of times I feel like questions that should be that are legitimate closed candidates for some particular reason have nevertheless generated very good answers. And one classic example of that form is the favorite feature of C# that I've never heard of before. That is hidden features of C#, and that is 9033. So not constructive, I guess, because it's just going to solicit extended discussion
well, the
or
problem
polling.
with all those hidden features questions is they tend to devolve. They start out great. People post all these, esoteric features, and then over time they evolve into here is a list of every feature in C#. Please
can vote on.
Like most.
That's true. So they lose value after about the top 10. I mean, so just like let's you freeze it or something, but like the number one, like system.io.path.combine, like that. This is the kind of list that somebody would sit down and they'd read the top 10 or the top 20, and then they'd say after about number 20, they'd say, all right, this is stupid. I don't need the next 240 answers.
System.io.path.combine isn't actually a feature of C#.
Okay. True. Technically true, but again, you're being literal here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of value to this thing existing on the internet.
This is argued about forever. I mean, if you look at the history on this thing, the controversy surrounding it has stretched on for years, and there are a score of meta posts about it. And people asking, should we protect these? Should we delete them?
Right.
What should be going on? And it keeps coming up over and over and over again. So no matter what you think of it, there's never an end to this discussion.
It's like the friggin' Supreme Court with what's it called, abortion. Not really like that.
There's never going to be a resolution that makes anything happen.
Yes, they're going to keep bringing it up long after we've resolved it. And, well, I guess what we don't have is a sort of a form of escalation for questions that are of high value for some reason. Where, at some point it's like not every moderator.
You do have a system. It's just most people don't know about it. And that's the problem with any social solution is you need to educate people about...
No. What do you do if you have how often do you have moderators that just start going back and forth on a particular question? I mean, most moderators tend to just give other moderators, full faith and credit.
Yeah. And
It happened on that very question.
Yeah. So where are we at? So I think there's a lot of bad questions that got deleted, certainly, but there's also like a little bit of overreaction. One of the things that I said, going back to the earliest podcasts, is that I was really worried about what happens when you have a fun question. The programmer cartoon is a great example, or programming on a boat, or the center cannot hold. One of these questions that gets literally 1 million views, 200,000 views to 1 million views. People seem to really like it. It seems to be making the internet better. Well, there's a lot of stuff that's good about that question. One is it's bringing people into Stack Overflow that may be able to help us, and that's kind of important. And it's again, it's linked to from a bunch of places. So on the argument of don't break the internet, it's like just making these pages be page not found is kind of a form of violence. I'm exaggerating for effect, but the questions have a lot of value that I don't want to lose, even if they're not particularly appropriate. So I started thinking about this in terms of even if they broke a rule, let's put it that way. And I thought about this in terms of Wikipedia. And now Wikipedia has constantly said, screw it. If we don't want this stuff in Wikipedia, it's gone. Like, we will just decide and we will go back and delete. And Wikipedia has gone through many deep, deep purges of tons and tons of content. Where they might have decided that they don't need an entry for every possible color of Fruit Loop, or they don't need a separate page for every flavor of Frito-Lays that's available only in certain countries. Or they can put those all on one page, or whatever it is that they decided in Wikipedia land. They would get very, very strict about it, delete a lot of stuff, piss off 1 million people, and they didn't really care. Now, on the one hand,
Wikipedia also has a formal system of government for deciding these things.
Yeah. And they're very strict and they're very literal.
It's not one person just making this decision in a vacuum and saying, we're not going to enumerate Frito-Lay varieties anymore.
Yeah.
And now they're going. This
True.
is up for discussion. And people vote on it. And it gets done.
Right. Now, I think that what happens, I can't really explain this, but Wikipedia has seen a dramatic drop in the number of people that contribute on a regular basis. From, I got to find that page again, but I think it was about 55,000 regular contributors to English Wikipedia, and it's dropped to about 35,000, and it's basically in free fall right now. So even though Wikipedia has been very successful, there's a risk that through their literal-minded, antagonism towards things which they consider to be damaging to the encyclopedia, they may be pushing people away that might have something to contribute.
Well, this goes back to my comment earlier about the lottery. This was Joe Cohorn's argument going way back. When people were asking, why do some of these survive and some don't, and he said pretty much, this is a lottery. You post stuff. Most of the time, this crap doesn't work. It's not productive. It doesn't produce good answers, and it's got to go.
Right.
Every so often, somebody hits the right notes.
Yeah.
It strikes a chord with everybody, and it produces great content. You won the lottery.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't play. You probably should not play the lottery. It's not sound investment advice. But if you do, great. Good for you.
Another way of so this is for the question asker. This is sort of saying, hey, should the question... A lot of the times, these questions... right now, if somebody wrote a question saying, what is your favorite Pascal feature or whatever it was, trying to win the lottery or whatever, they would get closed in 1 second. So there's no new questions that this really affects. The interesting thing is where sometimes you see... I remember about a year ago, there was an answer by Eric Lippert, which was a sort of amazing explanation of something about pointer arithmetic. Do you remember that, Jarrod? It was
the hotel room.
Yeah, the hotel room analogy with that Eric Lippert wrote. And actually, if you looked at that question, people then got pissed off because the question was like an almost exact dupe of some other question, and it was probably from a homework assignment or something. And it was they're like, you shouldn't have even answered this question. It was brain damaged. But it was a case where like an amazing answer had clearly redeemed a question that was actually a dupe, and then. So I think we closed that question as dupe, and then the person that had answered on the other dupe, was angry that his post was now appearing below Eric Lippert's or something. I don't remember the whole.
The two. Yeah, we merged the two, so the two sets of answers got combined into one question.
Yeah, and they didn't quite make sense because we had changed. Like, it was like literally the same block of code, but it used different numerical constants for a couple of example numbers. And, except for that, it was identical, or maybe slightly different variable names, and therefore the answer didn't make sense, and the person was angry that his answer no longer made sense in the context of the question that it got merged in with. And it was just kind of a lot of random noise that occurred around the fact that what was really important was to protect a good answer, essentially, and to tolerate a really bad question. I mean, it's almost like you're sitting there in an auditorium, and you've just listened to an awesome speaker, and somebody in the third row gets up and says... And the speaker says, yes, that's right, and then says something brilliant. And you're like, you don't even care what the guy in the third row was saying. You couldn't hear it. It was probably retarded. But it got you another 5 minutes of awesome content from the speaker.
So there I linked to the question. As you can see, it's closed as a duplicate.
Yes, that was 644-1218.
2,000 votes on that answer.
Yeah, and are they going to now delete this because it's been closed for years? I hope not, because it's just dupe, but... 2080.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
this is
So
this is a classic of the internet. This would be a disaster if this were in any way lost to the internet.
Exactly. This is winning the lottery. You know,
Right.
this person, and so this
Yeah.
person didn't even set out to play the lottery. This person was just asking a question.
He was working
They
on the
didn't
same
search
homework
first.
problem that the other guy was working on.
Sure, it's a common problem.
Yeah.
And so, he asked this question, and Eric finds it and answers it in this amazing metaphorical fashion, and it blows up.
Yeah.
That guy won the lottery. Eric won the lottery.
Right.
But neither of them, tried to play.
So
It's
now the
just
question is
something
this ever is it harmful? Like there have been some arguments that keeping these things around, that these lottery winners, keeping them around is harmful. So some people would say keeping these around is harmful because people see them and think that that's what you're supposed to do on the network.
Well, so here's the trick.
Yeah.
You don't want to push gambling too much. It's not sound investment advice.
Sure. No, we're not pushing gambling.
You don't want to tell people, hey, man, and of course, in real life we do this. We've got state lotteries that trump the winners to all and sundry, and say, hey, this is your chance at making the big time. You can win $10 million overnight. Just spend your $2 at the local gas station, and it's not a great idea. There was I don't know if you ever listened to Freakonomics Radio, but they did a story the other week about these savings accounts where you get like 0.1% of your investment put into a pool, and
and they use it to
you
buy.
can win every month. They have a drawing, and you can win like $50 or $500 or maybe once a year the grand prize winner gets $1,000. And it's a great way of getting people to just put money in savings accounts because everybody loves playing the lottery.
They like gambling better.
But now you're encouraging them to do the right thing. Instead of blowing it on lottery tickets, they're putting their money in the bank. They're putting it in a savings account. And they tried this in South Africa. They got shut down because it was too popular. It was competing with the state lottery.
The very important lottery, which sucks 60% or something of all the money put into it out.
Exactly. Nobody was benefiting. The savings account were actually convincing people who didn't have much money to put it away so they'd have money for a rainy day. Because, not because of sound, logical reasoning that, hey, you should save a little bit of money just in case something happens, but because you got this chance at winning big. And so people would do the right thing for, maybe the wrong reason, but for natural kind of intrinsic reasons. And that's what we kind of want. That's the kind of foundation of Stack Exchange, is that we're convincing people with this whole gamification thing. We're convincing people to make the internet better, to produce good answers, based on this hope that they're going to get some meaningless rep points out of it.
Some people might. A few.
Well, you can sit there and grind away every day.
All right,
Again,
but let's go back to my question now, Josh. If what is the bad thing about keeping one of these lottery winners around? So according to that, that's a good thing. Just keep a couple of lottery winners around, and people are like, hey, this is an amazing site. Some people win the lottery.
As long as it encourages them to put their money in the bank and not. So this Eric Lippert answer, this is perfect. This is a real question, right? This is a real problem somebody faced.
This is not really the worst question. Yeah.
No. He just went on there and he found a real question. He provided a real answer that answered the problem, and it happened to be a great answer, and it blew up. They both won the lottery. So this is a perfect example of the no lose lottery on Stack Overflow. The contrasting example to this is something like Programmer Cartoon, where so this blows up, but this is not behavior that benefits anybody. The winners get meaningless rep, and the losers.
So let's take Programmer Cartoons. Programmer Cartoons is sort of a famous one. Programmer Cartoons, so I was definitely, like, the case of your funniest Programmer Cartoon, that brought a lot of people into the site. I mean, that thing had a couple million page views, probably.
Sure. Then it benefits us. Yeah. It doesn't benefit the people reading, and it doesn't benefit...
Why? They laugh. Benefits everybody.
Laugh.
Now,
but
the question is...
you can search for Cartoon on Google and get Programmer Cartoons.
No, the only risk of Programmer Cartoons... No, but they wouldn't be funny, because we have voting. So we got the funniest ones at the top. Nobody else has voting.
So search for Programmer Joke.
Okay. Well...
let me link to this, because it's deleted, but...
I don't want to get too
Okay, so
too
the
deep
point
on
I'm
this.
trying to make, we want to encourage people to play the lottery, but we want to encourage them to play the no-lose lottery. We want to encourage them to answer questions that are real questions.
Agreed. Now the question is, let's say the programmer cartoons question. Let's say the programmer cartoons question had stayed open. Would that cause people to like how does that hurt the site? Now, one of the arguments is, your site's going to fill up with that stuff and it's going to be Reddit. All right, that's true, but we close every single one of those questions. So mostly they don't get to stay open. We already have one, and all the future programmer jokes are just dupes that go away. So we do close.
We take away, if we make sure nobody ever wins the lottery again, does that, and we keep displaying, the picture of the lottery winners at the gas station.
Yeah.
That's not good for people. That's not healthy for.
Well, all right. So that is the question I asked myself this morning, which is that, is it okay to keep these weird exceptions around? Like, what happens if? So I thought of several examples. I want to give you of places where, I can't think of any examples on Wikipedia, but there's sort of a famous example on the Internet RFCs, which are requests for comments that used to be the form in which Internet technical specifications were written. Like a specification explaining the protocol for email was written as an RFC. And there's kind of a famous RFC, we'll link it in the show notes, called Transmission of TCP IP Packets over Avian, by which they mean pigeon, carrier pigeon.
The pigeon protocol!
Yeah, and it basically said, well, here's the problems that you would have. It wasn't very long, and it probably came out on April 1st, if I'm not mistaken. But it is a genuine RFC. It has a real RFC number, and it was accepted and all that kind of stuff, and everybody laughed about it. And it was famous. And does it make... Now, the question is, did this ruin the Internet? Or does the presence of this one RFC that wasn't serious cause RFCs in general to become Reddit?
Okay, so...
Well, how do you find it? How would you find...
How would you find that?
If you went to the IETF.org.
RFC Avian...
Well, no, I mean, not just that, but...
Yeah.
Do they have a list of the top rated RFCs on their site somewhere?
There will be a list of RFCs. That's pretty easy to find. And that's the way they used to distribute it. It was distributed in the olden days. It was just email. So this is from 1990, right? So it's if you look at this thing, it's in TROF format. It's a typesetting format for line printers that ran on PDP-8s, which many of the RFCs are in. I mean, it's before. It's before fonts. It's before serif font. It's obviously before pagination because it's already paginated to fit on line printer paper, like old RFCs. It's April 1st, 1990. The IP datagram is printed on a small scroll of paper in hexadecimal with each octet separated by white stuff and black stuff. So it's hilarious. Okay. Now the question is, does this clutter RFCs? Yeah, sure. It was a joke. Everybody figured out that it was a joke in about 10 minutes and had a big laugh. Next question, were a bunch of engineering nerds angry that such a thing came out and got an actual RFC number and occupied the number 1149, which could never be used for a real protocol ever again? Yes, I guarantee you that this thing set off a huge flame war, the likes of which have never been seen. I'm guessing. But it stayed around. Nobody deleted it or caused it to be removed from the Internet. So that's the first example I thought of where breaking the rules on April 1st. Basically, the example is not this RFC, but it's April 1st, which is something that says, on April 1st, you can do something funny. You can break the rules. And you don't then have to destroy that thing. And it doesn't destroy your community that sometimes you allow something that breaks the rules into the system, into the core system. Its content gets to live with all the other content forever in the same format. That's concept number one. An even older concept than that, which you can see right now on Judaism.Stack Exchange, is the concept of Purim Torah, which is topical to the Jewish festival of Purim, which is pretty much right now. And they've got a tag for that, which is Purim Torah in Jest. And they've got 13 questions tagged that way. And they have a whole policy on Purim Torah. So let me tell you what that is. Torah is the Bible, is the book of laws that God gave us, and Purim is a festival where you get drunk and do silly things and dress up in funny costumes and all that kind of stuff. So it's the festival on which no rules apply. You're actually required to get drunk. It is actually the law that you must get drunk on Purim. And so Purim Torah is the tradition that is a very, very old tradition. I don't know how old it goes, where you make something up that's a fake discussion of Jewish law, but is funny. And you discuss it as if you were serious, as if this were an actual important issue that you were actually facing. None of this stuff is going to make sense to anybody that doesn't know like regular Torah, but this is literally the same thing as that RFC of IP datagrams over a carrier. And the Judaism Stack Exchange is basically kind of allowing it around the period of Purim, the festival of Purim, and they're certainly not going to purge these things from the site. They have a nice policy, and the only rule is that it has to be funny. But this is an example of 2,000 years of Jewish scholarship has not been destroyed by the fact that once in a while they allow you to use the forms of Jewish scholarship and the books of Jewish scholarship and all that kind of stuff to just tell a joke, and to do something that's completely not serious. This was a famous one. This one got a lot of page views, actually, rejecting others' friend requests on Facebook. And it actually does something rather humorous where it twists, it changes one letter in a biblical verse to make something appear to be a biblical verse about Facebook. Which obviously couldn't because the Bible was written before Facebook. So that's the funny thing. Get it? Haha, you went to explain a joke. It's not funny. That's on Judaism Stack Exchange, question 14,756. So those are, that was the second example I found of, it's okay to sometimes break the rules and keep that around.
But does the rest of the time, does the community adhere to the rules?
Yeah.
I just posted a great example of an April Fool's joke on Stack Overflow.
5508110. Hey, did we keep that? Oh, that was awesome.
I had to delete and lock that just the other day because, hey, we're coming up on April again. Yeah, it's about time to delete it.
That was, wait, that wasn't even as good as, there was another one that was a real question. It was the, why doesn't this work? And it was, it was combining two operators, like the down two operator. Do you remember that? It was a loop. It was a C loop that was using the down two operator. It was, dash greater than. It was something with a dash greater than. We probably own that by now in Google. Nothing. It's unsearchable.
Search for symbols.
What operator is this?
Yeah, what operator is this? And oh man, what operator? That got a lot of page views. Down to operator. Yeah, I'm gonna find that one.
This is an unsearchable title.
Well, I think if you go to questions and then sort by top voted, it's there.
Yeah. What operator is this? There are kind of a lot of these. It was.
Yeah. What is the name of this operator? It's here. I'll link it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's 1642028. What is the name of this operator? Dash greater than. And then it does something in C that you are just simply not allowed to do. And everybody looks at that and says, what the hell? That no possible way that can work. And it works because it's actually a minus and then a greater than. And it just looks like it's being an arrow.
See, that's not even a joke. That's just clever.
Yes.
That's like, wow.
Yeah, those two operator. It's you could see this being closed. I see it open, but this is this is an example of something funny.
No, this is perfect. I mean, this is winning the lottery. This could be considered kind of a stupid question, but it's hits that point where everybody's going to look at this and say, what?
And one thing we said, going all the way back, I said this on the podcast a lot of times, which is that it's okay for this to happen occasionally, and that every society has days when the rules are not obeyed. It has to have, I don't know if it's a safety valve or whatever, but the one thing that is constant across all cultures in the entire world is that they all have a holiday in which rules are lessened, in which certain rules are reduced. Certain, you're required to, although it is actually forbidden under Orthodox Jewish law for a man to dress as a woman or vice versa. Don't know why, but it's forbidden. And on Purim, it's done frequently. So there are always, and every holiday has that, whether it's the Americans with Halloween or April Fool's Day,
Thursday.
Thursday. We got Naked Friday around the Stack Overflow office. Yeah. So. I always felt that we're building a culture here, and that every culture has this escape hatch of there is a rule, there's a day, or there are certain circumstances, and the anthropologists call them rights of intensification, where the normal rules don't apply, and you're allowed to reduce one or two of them slightly. And I think that that's okay if. I know that's sort of hard for the most literal-minded of programmers to accept, but that it's okay if there are 30 awesome questions on the entire network.
Sure. I think I compared this to salt at one point. You need a little bit. It makes things better. If you sit down with a great big bowl of salt and dive in, you're going to get sick. You don't want the... Yeah, exactly. We don't want to be the big bowl of salt. We want to be the fairly dry professional site, but we want that little bit of salt on there just to give it, a little bit of flavor.
All right. So, so where have we gotten? I think we're in general agreement that the absolute best of the questions that might otherwise be closed probably shouldn't be closed.
Sure. But now, Stack Overflow isn't linear. There's no concept of, this question appears for today and not every other day.
Every day you can get salt.
You have a problem with, as Stack Overflow grows, as it gets older, more and more of these, your data goof off questions show up just on the site all the time.
Wait, so
right
people
there
are asking them
for top questions.
Well, are these old things being regurgitated, or are they?
Well, there's that. I mean, that's the problem with that's the number one problem is once you get these there, everybody and their brother thinks they've got to chime in, even if they've got nothing to say.
Right.
And so, the programmer cartoon thing, even if you think that had value, you don't need every joke that ever mentions programmers, every cartoon that ever happens to be tangentially related to programmers showing up there. On it because somebody had to find it and post it, and so every day of the week,
it comes back up to the homepage.
Year, it's coming up to the top of the page.
Yeah. So that one, that could be locked, right?
Yes. Well, we have this locking feature that shuts down posting new answers, shuts down modification, just keeps it kind of
frozen in time.
It's fairly frozen in there. It was a little bit problematic because locking has sort of changed over time. It doesn't mean exactly what it sounds like on the box, but that's a pretty close equivalent to turning a read-only living or a read-write living document, which we try for this Wikipedia, like anybody can come in and edit, anybody can vote and improve thing. The locking shuts it down, says, okay, this is static, this is done, this is finished, and so one of the things Jarrod here has been working on is improving that to kind of plug some of the holes, because really, once you've got a question like this, that's perfect. A perfect example of winning the lottery, of being a great goof-off day question.
Right.
You don't want anybody doing anything to it. I mean, it's all right. April Fool's is over. We're moving on. We're locking it.
There are examples of that are completely legit questions. Like I still find on questions that I've written answers to a long time ago that, there's always somebody that wants to come in and add a comment, adding their 2 cents that have already been added 50 times. I mean, like I'm already up to $1.48 on everybody's friggin' 2 cents of the same thing. And that question keeps coming up in my universal inbox saying, hey, you got another 2 cents here.
There's another feature on the site which we added a while back, kind of in response to this tendency of new users to find the site, find these really popular questions, and immediately think, oh, I need to write something here too, and not read any of the existing answers. I mean, these could be straight up programming questions. These can be, how do I round a number in C or C++, and there's like 4 algorithms for this, and they've all been posted, but you're not reading any of them. You just you think, oh, I know this. I've got a code snippet around for this. I'm going to paste it into this answer box down at the bottom after having scrolled past all the existing answers and hit post. And so pretty soon you've got 10 duplicates of your answer.
Okay, so I don't want to get too I don't want to get too yeah, go on, finish. We're talking a lot about like a certain class of questions that I'm not that concerned about, because I think there's a larger class of questions that we want to move on to, which is things that are no longer on topic but nevertheless have awesome answers. Maybe like there were an awful lot of career questions that got in there in the early days that I guess are only just getting.
I'm sorry you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so we have several things to discuss today. One is, are we all on the same page that there exists a class of question that's awesome enough that it just can't go? Second, the second question is the reputation. Basically, is like a lot of times somebody wrote a really good answer that was awesome while it was there, and they sort of don't know that you've deleted it, and now they suddenly realize that you deleted it. They've lost the reputation, but even more, it sort of angers them that they wrote this amazing thing and left this beautiful artifact on the internet for everybody. That who knows? They've probably been pointing people to it, and it's in their .sig so that it goes out in every one of their emails. And lo and behold, they discover that it's been closed by some vandalous person who has some bizarre set of rules that you didn't know about, didn't exist at the time, maybe. So that's the next question, which is sort of the fact is there's just a limited amount of violence that you can do on people's very old posts before they start to get angry and storm off.
Well, this ties back into what you mentioned with Wikipedia and just kind of discouraging people after a while because, maybe the cornflakes article may have not had any value, but if you put your heart and soul into that and it got shut down, you're not going to come back and write about something you know about that does have lasting value.
Right.
And yeah.
And
I think we want to kind of avoid discouraging people too much, even if we've got a reason to not keep their stuff around.
Yeah.
It at some point it isn't worth the personal grief to them to take away what is really a fairly arbitrary number from them.
Yeah. Now there's a separate question of taking away the number and taking away the post. So in terms of taking away the number, one thing which was learned early on by the airlines when they did frequent flyer miles is that they discovered that people were earning a lot of frequent flyer miles, and then they were reluctant to actually use them or cash them in because they didn't want that number to go down. Like every time they logged onto the airline's website, or I guess this was early, but travelers were imagining that every time they go to check in for a flight, the agent there would see that they have 50,000 miles and treat them extra special because they spend a lot of money on the airline, which is indeed true. And they were afraid if they used all 50,000 of those miles to fly somewhere, to take a first-class trip to Tahiti, which is actually more like 5 billion miles. But you can only do it once a year. Then their mileage, quote unquote, will go down to zero, and they didn't think they would be treated as well by the airline anymore because their mileage was down at zero. And so what the airlines realized that they had to do is start printing their lifetime earned miles every time they printed their miles. So on most frequent flyer statements, they started saying, you have 18,000 miles now, but over your entire lifetime, you've earned 183,000. So it's just a way of saying, hey, we recognize that you've done a lot of awesome work over the years. You don't currently have those miles available to spend, but you've done this work. And what the gamification people learned over the years is that the best karma systems are basically monotonically increasing. They go up, but they never go down. So we can actually address a lot of the issues that we're having by saying, basically you get to, once you've earned some reputation and maybe it's stayed on the site for 24 hours or 48 hours, it's been around for a while, so it's like it wasn't actually abusive earning of the reputation, that's locked in. That's a permanent part of your reputation. That's it. You got those points.
That is what Nick Craver is working on right now. We should be rolling it out soon. Yeah, for deleted content.
This is the best podcast ever.
We're actually making it a little bit more than 24 or 48 hours. We went with 2 months, so 60 days.
I argued a year, but whatever.
Yeah,
a year.
we had to wrestle Josh down to 60 days.
Why longer? I mean, bad stuff gets deleted pretty fast, doesn't it?
Well, sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. So
yeah, that was. So yeah, Monty had to show me the date on that before I go with 2 months. But I mean, I've dealt with questions that you can get closed in like 3 hours, and then can't get enough delete votes.
Well, so the question is,
2 months.
Are these malevolent questions that stay open for years? Malevolent. In other words, are they naked grabs for reputation?
Mode for this. you get crappy questions asked all the time, and there's always this temptation to go on and just post a really snarky answer.
Okay.
And so occasionally you get the center cannot hold. Usually you just get somebody being mean.
Okay.
And we don't really want to encourage that. We definitely don't want to reward it.
Oh, but
if
you think people will
going
vote
around
this
the site
up?
leaving mean, snarky answers and getting a bunch of upvotes and then getting them deleted, that's
punishable.
Yeah.
It's a punishable offense. Yeah.
And so, I mean, really, it should exist on the site for a significant time. It should be there being useful to people, even if the question's closed. It should be there.
There's another criterion, which is the number of views that page got, which we may want to have special behavior for pages that get more than, by our metric, 1,000 views or 10,000 views, which means probably 1 million people actually saw the page. That's how accurate that number is.
That number is very accurate.
If that number is accurate, I will be a monkey's.
They're all coming in from one IP address.
Is that the IP address of the Redis server?
Yeah, I guess so.
That works. Because if you add up the number of page views, it doesn't jive with Google Analytics. But anyway, let's just say that number is supremely accurate. A question might get to a certain number of page views, and that might indicate that it's at least internet famous, and somebody should keep an eye on it for that reason, or maybe it should have special. Maybe it takes 10 close votes instead of 5 close votes, or maybe it takes a mod instead of just people voting, or
right.
or maybe the rep locks in. Those are. Those are all ways, because I feel like taking away rep from somebody is sort of like poking them in the eye. After you, I mean, you're going to. If it was actually malevolent and the person was behaving badly, it's okay for the system to send them signals saying, "Listen, this is bad behavior. Stop doing this. We're closing a lot of your questions. You're losing their reputation on them. Don't bother." On the other hand, if they did something in good faith, the burden is going to be on us to try to make them feel like, listen, we just want to teach you something. Fine, keep your rep, but just don't do that again because, it'll get closed.
Yeah. And, we have systems in there for if somebody posts just something completely beyond the pale, we can punish them.
Yeah, but that's not really, we're not even close.
That's not really what I'm talking about.
So they
here.
keep the rep. And then earlier today I was talking to Jarrod, and he had this concept of archiving things, and so, like, doing something to keep good old questions not being 4.0, error pages, 404s.
Right. On Meta, one of our most prolific users is Pekka, and he's had this idea of basically us hosting our own archive of the deleted content that was valuable to the community and that has been deleted. That's, it's very contentious.
So that's on Meta, and the question number is 122249.
Yes. Building an archive of deleted questions.
Yeah.
So we've been discussing this internally, and I think it's a great idea. I think, Josh, you're on. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what are your feelings about this?
As long as we can avoid getting too much crap in it.
Yeah.
We're going to have to pick our criteria wisely, or just manually archive stuff.
So, you have a criteria that this is not for everything that got deleted, obviously, because otherwise this would just be our spam tree.
Right.
One possibility is making a custom page that says when you go to so the first question is, what happens when you go to a deleted question? Because a lot of these questions, like the programmer cartoons and stuff, have a lot of inbound links from the internet, and they get a lot of traffic. And people come in and they find basically the page does not exist, and then we've broken the internet a little bit, and we're pissing off Google because we're advertising pages don't exist anymore or whatever. And that's probably not true. Never mind. I take that one about Google back. But we're breaking the internet a little bit, and a lot of times people have links to these things or refer to them from other questions, and you just can't see them anymore. And talk about them on Meta even, and talk about them on old podcasts, and every time I need to make my turtle turn left, I try to find that damn question. So he's a tortoise, really, not a turtle so much. Anyway, what if you landed on a page that said this question has been deleted, but you can find an archive of it here, as it existed in the past, or something like that. So, or just
redirects.
You were talking about
right.
a plain old redirect,
right? And you're redirected to a site that it's visually distinct from where it came from.
So it could be called the Stack Overflow. What would it be called? Oh. For Stack Overflow forum. I'm thinking because there was Penthouse and it had that. Never mind.
Oh no.
And then they made a whole magazine of that
that's a
stuff because
terrible
nobody
idea.
wanted that stuff in the regular magazine because it was all words.
Words. Who wants to read?
I'm sorry. The Stack Overflow Bitbucket, Stack Overflow Off Topic, or Stack Overflow Archive, or something like that.
Right.
So it's you don't even know. I mean, and I actually think that it's important that it not be these questions as advertisements for how awesome Stack Overflow is should probably persist. You know what I mean? Like it's
right.
like we're not ashamed of this question. It's just not on there anymore. This is like one of the Stack Overflow history or archive. It's like archive.org, right? It's like the Stack Overflow time machine.
Way back.
Yeah, Stack Overflow time machine. I like it. See, we market this as a
I
time
just don't
machine,
want to go
and now it's awesome.
to the C# page and see all joke questions on the front of the list there. I mean, that's,
Well, what we were just discussing is that it might not be that we would even have a list. Like we would just make sure that inbound links still worked, and the content is still available where it's linked, like in the first stages. Before we build out,
you search Google Programmer Cartoons, we're top of the list. You click through, everything works, everything's copacetic.
Yeah, instead of having a Stack
Reigning
Overflow
supreme.
logo, it says the Stack Overflow time machine, and there's like a banner
you don't
that
actually
says
see it on the site.
This page is no longer a part of Stack Overflow. This is the way it appeared on such and such a date. So it looks kind of like archive.org.
Yeah.
I'm actually, we were talking about this at lunch, and I didn't like it at lunch because I thought it was just a different version of closed. But I actually like this a little bit more now. And we also had, we always had that thing for a while that never went anywhere, where we put a little tag on the question saying this question is here for historical value because it's awesome.
Well,
but believe me, today this question would be deleted in a flash, so don't get too attached to it.
that's another thing that as a stopgap, as we progress towards toward this archive or time machine. That lock for historical reasons or for historical significance, it's gotten quite a bit more powerful. Like if you lock a question with that, you can no longer edit it or edit any of the answers. Like it locks everything on the question and its answers.
It was just a celebration of April 1st from three years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Currently, if you lock a question, or lock a post, only that one single post is prevented from having changes done to it.
This is actually, when I look at the tagged questions on C# based on number of votes, I can see a lot of these kind of at risk of getting closed. Well, not really. Some of them are pretty good. What is the best battleship AI? What's the strangest? Things like the strangest corner case. How to use a piano keyboard as a computer keyboard. Okay. No, that one can stay open. What are your favorite extension methods for C#? Yeah, that's a favorite thing. Oh yeah, here's what it says. It says, caution, this question is from the early days of Stack Overflow, and while we recognize its historical significance, let's have chosen to keep it around. Please realize that a question like this were to be asked today, it would be very likely to be closed by the current community of users, and the person who asked it would be put off the train at the next stop, and a bill sent to their home, and a notice put in the newspaper of their town where they were born.
Jarrod, copy down that verbiage and make sure it gets into the final message there.
We should just play that, what Joel said, when you open the page. Yeah.
Background sound. Alex is telling me we have to wind up because we've done an entire hour on this podcast. So that was a completely unplanned podcast because this thing sort of came up. But and this is I try not to present this as a fait accompli or a decision, so to speak. But just to give you, Josh, a chance to sort of sound off about this in public in a format that people can hear, so they don't have to so they don't know who to talk to when they have issues. For those of you that thought that we weren't doing any more podcasts, which I thought until this morning, and I decided this would be a fun one, I think we should continue doing these with some, moderate regularity. This was sort of an issue that's going on right now today, and I don't know what all the resolution will be, and this will probably still get churned quite a bit on Meta and on the core team and in the chat rooms and in the. Where's a place, Josh, that people should go if they have some feedback on this, other than at the comments on the blog post of this podcast, which is probably the worst place to go with your comments.
Yeah, go to Metastack Overflow, and there's a question on there, which I don't remember the title of now.
But it's probably pretty active right now.
But I just wrote it like yesterday, so I'll find the number in a minute because it can't be that far buried. Community-led deletionism, a protocol for sanity.
Okay,
and that's question number 124439.
Yes,
on Metastack Overflow.
Alex will put together show notes, and this will all be linked on the show notes at blog.stackoverflow.com, which actually, since we're not live broadcasting this one, are already there, so you can already go to blog.stackoverflow or stackexchange.com. See, that's the
either
goes to the same thing.
Yeah, they should go to the same thing. Now, there's a bug today with a cat. One of them has a longer cache than the other one. And oh my God, there's a long article there that you wrote. You got 75 upvotes. Yeah, I'm going to give you another one. 76. Ta-da!
All right.
Yeah.
I've already hit the rep app today, so that gave me nothing.
Okay, I'm taking it back then. Giving you a downvote.
Downvote it, yes. They haven't fixed the bugs yet. That's free.
Yeah, well, I'm actually looking forward to taking some of these old questions, like the logo one and stuff like that, and bringing them back, actually. And I think that it seems like what we need is a relatively mechanical rule to decide when something is just closed and when something is closed and put in the time machine.
It needs to be something that it doesn't require human intervention because we can see all the contention.
What if it just stayed open for 3 weeks and it gets to move to the time machine, and if it got closed within because all the spam and stuff like that would probably get closed. There's probably very little spam on our system that survived a day.
Right.
And it's okay if the time machine has a bunch of stuff on there that you can get to that's like, old random, career questions that weren't very good and never got an answer.
We're going to be discussing this at length and trying different algorithms to see what comes up. Marty's going to be beating me to death with the science hammer and so on. So
the science hammer.
The science hammer.
Excellent.
We're going to get a bunch of different ideas together and see what actually works.
Yeah. And to our podcast listeners, if you haven't noticed, and we've announced this a couple of times, but stuff like this that used to be the Jeff Atwood, who otherwise known as at Coding Horror, who at least this week is still co-founder of Stack Overflow. We have not yet erased him from history. I don't think we have any plans to do that either. But having now left the company, the official person to deal with stuff like, what should the site do and how should we change the code so that it implements these new things is pretty much Josh. And the rest of the team who some of you already know and have discovered on the meta. But he's kind of the front page address for that kind of stuff. This has been Podcast 32. Wasn't the last one with Jeff 32, or that was 31?
That was 31.
This has been Podcast 32, and as
Podcast
usual,
plus.
not a lot of formality around our podcast. Thank you very much. See you next week.